In today's video, we're out here looking at the 2017 Ram 1500 pickup truck. Comparisons with pickup trucks are a little bit tricky because there are so many different ways you can get your truck. For instance, for 2017, the Ram 1500 is available with 3 different beds, 3 different cabs. You can of course get it in 2x4 or 4x4. There are 3 different engines under the hood and no less than 12 different trim levels. And of course, all of those can be combined with different axle ratios and whether or not you want to get the air suspension that our model is equipped with. The model we're taking a look at today is the new 2017 Night Edition Ram 1500, which you can think of as sort of fitting into the lower half of the lineup. There are 3 basic grille shapes depending on the trim level you get. Because we're in the Night Edition trim, we have the traditional crosshair grille. It's of course blacked out. You'll find a chrome version of this grille in some trim levels. Then we have the sort of frowny face grille that we find in the Ram 1500 Rebel, and then the grille that's the newer design with sort of twin opposing C shapes inserted in the grille in the top end trims. From this angle, you can see that Ram is still using their sort of big rig step down from the hood to the headlamp module area of the front end of the vehicle. That's a design cue that Ram has been known for some time. You'll also notice that we have an optional hood on our particular model. There are a wide variety of options and accessories available for the 1500, just like every other pickup truck in America, and this particular model has the optional sport hood. One of the things that separates the main 3 truck brands in America, Ford, Chevy, and Ram, from the rest of the competition is the amount of variation that we find in their pickup trucks. As I said before, there are 3 different cabs and 3 different beds available in the Ram 1500, and you can mix and match them. You can, of course, get the classic American configuration of a short cab and a long bed, but you can also get a short bed in that particular model. You can get the big cab that we have right here with 2 different bed lengths in the back as well. Depending on the options you select, your Ram 1500 will range from 209 inches long to 237 inches long. At the short end, this is still about 1 foot longer than a Ford Explorer. It'd be pretty hard from the rear to confuse this with any other pickup truck in America because we have this very large Ram logo right there across the tailgate. Our model is the V8 Night Edition, so we have twin exhaust right down there below, LED tail lamps. There's also a tow hitch receiver right here below the license plate, and we have 4-pin and 7-pin wiring harness connections. FCA has a long history of creating interesting storage compartments in their vehicles, from under-seat storage to these Ram boxes that we find optional in the bed. This option will set you back around $1,300, and it's available in the 2 shorter beds of the Ram 1500. You cannot get this with the 8-foot bed. The storage compartment is integrated into the side of the pickup truck bed right there around the wheel well. You'll notice that it gets a little bit deeper right in front of the wheel well. And if we move to the rear, it also gets deeper right there behind the wheel well. There's a little switch over here to turn the lights inside on and off. Selecting the Ram box option causes the pickup truck bed to become extremely square, although it is still 4 feet wide. Thanks to tightening fuel economy regulations in the United States, most Ram 1500 models will start out with a 3.6-liter V6 engine under the hood. That produces 305 horsepower, 269 pound-feet of torque, and is mated to a standard 8-speed automatic transmission. That combination of a naturally aspirated V6 engine and a standard 8-speed automatic make the base V6 version of the Ram 1500 one of my favorite V6 tow vehicles. It also means that the fuel economy is going to be a little bit better than some of those other base V6s we see in the competition. The engine we're driving today is the optional 5.7-liter V8 engine. It produces 395 horsepower, 410 pound-feet of torque, and is mated to a slightly beefier version of that same 8-speed automatic. There should also be a 3-liter turbo diesel engine available for 2017, producing 240 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque, but that engine is currently on a sales hold because of the drama between FCA and the EPA over the emissions out of that diesel engine. The details of the drama between FCA and the EPA are a little bit difficult to nail down, but FCA seems to be fighting this much harder than Volkswagen was with their diesel scandal. FCA doesn't think that they have done anything wrong, but they are willing to modify the software in the diesel engine, so I do expect to see that diesel back under this hood before the end of the year. The combination of this HEMI V8 and the 4-wheel drive system will give you the lowest fuel economy at 17 miles per gallon combined. If the diesel does become available in the United States, it should get about 24 to 25 miles per gallon in the combined EPA cycle. Towing and payload vary greatly in a pickup truck depending on the options that you get. The bed, the cab, the engine, etc. all affect the payload and tow rating. The model that we're driving has a rated payload of 1,100 pounds, which is on the low end of the 1,500 scale, and a maximum tow rating of 10,060 pounds. Generally speaking, if you want higher payload capacities in your pickup truck in the half-ton segment, you should look at the Ford F-150. Ram has a history of out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to pickup truck suspension designs. You've probably heard that the Ram 1500 has a coil spring suspension in the rear end, which is quite unique for a half-ton American pickup truck. The coil spring suspension is responsible for giving the Ram one of the best rides in the segment, but it's also responsible for allowing the optional four-corner air suspension. This system is very closely related to the air suspension systems that we find in Land Rovers and, of course, the Jeep Grand Cherokee. At the moment, we're in the highest mode, which gives us 11.4 inches of ground clearance in this particular trim. Your ground clearance will vary depending on the bed and the cab that you select. We can also lower this down one notch to the off-road 1 height setting. That will give us 10.6 inches of clearance. Or I can select the button here and go down to the normal ride height setting, which gives us 9.4 inches of ground clearance. Or I can go all the way to the floor to the entry and exit height, which gives us 7.4 inches of clearance and makes it a little bit easier to get in and out of the truck. If you forgot to lower the vehicle before you parked it, you can also click a button on the remote twice and it will actually cause the vehicle to lower itself remotely. That's handy if you're planning to put something large and heavy in the bed of the pickup truck, but it was already at its highest height, or even if it was at its normal height, you do get those extra 2 inches of height. In addition to giving you extra clearance for off-road activities and a slightly cushier ride, the air suspension also lowers itself for better aerodynamics out on the highway, and it offers load leveling ability. So if you put a lot of weight in the bed of your pickup truck or you tow, this vehicle is going to return itself to its median suspension height right around here or so. And that's going to give the vehicle better driving dynamics out on the road, whether you're towing a trailer or not. This is not the same system that we find in the heavy-duty Ram pickup trucks, because the Ram 2500, for instance, does not have a full four-corner air suspension. It just has a rear air suspension that's designed simply for load leveling. When it comes to front seat comfort, I'm going to give the Ram 1500 7 out of 10 points. These seats are very comfortable for my 6-foot frame, but you should know that they're not quite as adjustable as some of the competition, and that's why I've had to remove a point or two. Although we do have a tilting steering column, it does not telescope. We do have adjustable reach pedals, and we have a 2-way adjustable lumbar support, but you will find a telescoping steering column, 4-way adjustable lumbar, and optional massage in some of the competition's trucks. As you'd expect from a large truck, we have a large rear passenger area, although you do find a little bit more room in some of the competition. Whether or not that room matters to you really depends on how big you are. As you can see, I'm 6 feet tall, and I have about 9 inches of legroom left with the front seat, very comfortably adjusted for me. I also have about 1.5 inches of headroom left. Moving over to the middle seat, it's obvious that pickup trucks are very wide vehicles in America. You could very comfortably fit 3 adults across the back. If I move all the way over to the right side, this front seat is all the way back in its tracks, and I still have about 5 inches of legroom left. Like most full-size pickup trucks in America, the rear seats fold up so that way you can put larger items in the vehicle. Then you can put these feet down on this section, flip that down, and we get a perfectly level cargo area. You can also lift the panel up, and then we get access to a storage area there where you can put various items. You'll also find an interestingly hidden storage cubby right here under the mat where we can put very large items. Almost 2-liter bottles will fit in these storage wells. As we take a look around the interior, keep in mind we are in the Night Edition trim, which, as I said before, is sort of in the lower half of the trim lineup. We have height adjustable seat belts for the driver and front passenger, 2-way adjustable headrests, and the front seats are combination cloth and vinyl. The front doors are made for a combination of hard and soft touch plastics. We have hard plastics lower on the door, but this center section right here that forms the sill of the door, the armrest, and this trim panel right here by the door handle itself is all a soft touch material. Integrated into the door design right there beneath the window switches and the door handle is a storage compartment. We also have a bottle holder and other storage compartment lower in the door. The upper portion of the dashboard is cast from a soft touch material, and then on the passenger side we find 2 glove compartments. The first glove compartment is a slot style compartment. We have lighting right there inside, as you can see, but it's not quite deep enough to put an iPhone 7 Plus inside and close the lid in that orientation. We can of course turn it around that way and put several of them inside. Lower on the dashboard we find a bin style glove compartment. I was able to fit a small tablet computer inside, but the larger ones will not fit. Our model has the optional Alpine audio system with a center channel speaker right there in the center of the dashboard. We find more of that soft touch injection molded dashboard trim right there. A Ram branded storage cubby right there above the infotainment system. Not quite big enough to put an iPhone 7 Plus inside. You can see it is a little bit too shallow. The vehicle that we're driving has the optional factory navigation software, and all versions of Uconnect have a variety of different apps that are available from the integrated app store. You should know that the 2017 Ram does not get the latest version of Uconnect, which supports Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. This is just one version behind, so you would have to interact with your media device using the standard media interface. Continuing down from there, we have the start-stop button for the engine on the left. The rotary shift knob, drive is all the way over to the right, park is all the way over to the left. Below that, we have the controls for the four-wheel drive system. We have four-wheel drive auto in this particular model, two-wheel drive mode, four-wheel drive lock, and four-wheel drive low. Then we find some physical buttons for the Uconnect infotainment system, as well as the climate control system. Power and volume over here, screen off, back button, hazard light button, tune, browse, and scroll knob. Then some physical buttons for the climate control system. These are also duplicated in the software, so I can hit the climate button there, and I can adjust temperature up here or down here with these physical buttons. Below that button bank, we find the integrated trailer brake controller. We can adjust the gain with these buttons right here and actuate the trailer brakes right there. These two buttons adjust the ride height, because again, we do have the optional air suspension. We're in the highest ride height mode. I can go all the way down there to the lowest ride height mode, and the system will then respond and show us the status as it cycles through those particular ride heights. We then have some buttons for our heated seats, buttons to enable and disable the parking sensors in the front and the rear of the vehicle, and then the heated seat button for the passenger. Below those buttons, we find another storage area where you could very easily insert your smartphone. There's enough room to put your iPhone 7 Plus in that orientation if you want to, and you should know that it's pretty easy for pens and pencils to roll all the way to the back, because this storage area is a little bit deeper than you might think. Behind that, we find two large cup holders and yet another storage area. This one has kind of an interesting feature where you can actually insert your smartphone right there in those little rubber guides. So for instance, if you were using your Waze app or some other app and you wanted to have your phone firmly fixed into place, you could just insert it right like there. There's enough room for two phones side by side. Between the front seats, we find a padded center armrest with a big Ram logo right there. This opens in two different stages. The first one has a flat storage area here where you could put cell phones, that sort of thing. We have cutouts for the cords, coin holders, and this is where you'll find the USB auxiliary input and USB charge-only port for your various devices. Opening up the next tier reveals a larger storage area, but this is not quite as large as you find in some pickup trucks that allow you to put letter-sized hanging folders. This is just a little bit too small for that. The model that we're driving features a partial LCD instrument cluster on the driver's side. We have a few physical dials over here for the tachometer, the speedometer, the engine temperature, battery level. The model that we're driving features a partial LCD instrument cluster. We have 6 physical dials, as you can see, including the speedometer, the tachometer, engine temperature, fuel level, etc. And then everything else you're seeing is generated by this LCD that spans a small portion right here of the tachometer and then the area between the speedometer and the tachometer. The digital display gives us some additional gauges, tells us the status of the four-wheel drive system as well as the air suspension. Right now we're at the entry and exit height. You can also get some digital gauge readouts if you prefer to read those. We have oil life, oil temperature, trans temperature, etc. This is also where you'll find the fuel economy screens, trip computer screens. There's also a trailer brake status screen, and it will tell you how many miles you've towed your trailer. And of course, we have our typical media and message layouts as well. Because of the general age of the Ram 1500, we don't see FCA's latest steering wheel design. This is just one generation prior to that. The main difference is seen in the way the buttons are put on the front of the steering wheel. We have this 4-way button arrangement that controls that multifunction display right there in the center, voice command button, phone button. And then on the right side of the steering wheel, we have the buttons for our cruise control system, and then gear up and gear down. As we see in other pickup trucks out there, this is not exactly a manual mode, but more of a limitation of the number of gears. So if I set this to gear 5, for instance, as you see right there in the multifunction display, that means the vehicle will use gears 1 through 5, and right there next to the D in the slightly grayed out number, it'll tell you what gear the vehicle is currently in. In our acceleration test, the model that we're driving ran from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds. This vehicle has the 392 rear axle ratio, the 5.7 liter HEMI V8 engine, the 8-speed automatic transmission, and the 20-inch wheels and tires. There are a wide variety of different axle ratios and engines to choose from in pickup trucks, so it's important to keep those things in mind when you're starting to compare acceleration figures. This same engine and transmission with the same wheels that this vehicle has on it, but a different axle ratio, would go from 0 to 60 in a different time. 6.6 seconds, 0 to 60, means this is just a little bit slower than the last EcoBoost F-150 that we tested, and that would be the non-Ford Raptor EcoBoost model. That ran from 0 to 60 in 6.5 with the older 6-speed automatic. Now, Ford has said that they will be putting their new 10-speed automatic transmission behind that same engine. I expect that combination will be faster 0 to 60 than the Ram 1500 with the V8. In our braking test, we ran from 60 miles an hour back to 0 in 129 feet, which is very respectable for a half-ton pickup truck. In fact, this was only 2 feet longer than the all-aluminum F-150 that we recently tested. When it comes to handling, I'm going to give the Ram 1500 a B-. It's obvious that this is one of the older designs of pickup trucks in America. The F-150 feels sharper, it feels crisper out on the road. It also feels much more nimble because it's lighter. The aluminum-intensive design of the F-150 helps save several hundred pounds of curb weight in that vehicle, and that really does affect your acceleration, your braking, and your handling score. Out here on this gravel road, the full four-corner air suspension delivers one of the most polished rides you can find in a half-ton pickup truck, even when the bed of the pickup truck is empty. That's because the suspension in this vehicle can adapt to a variety of different weights in the back of the vehicle. That helps keep the suspension centered for the optimum handling ability in the vehicle, but also helps deliver a more polished ride than we find in the other pickup trucks out there. In terms of cabin noise, we scored 74 decibels at 50 miles an hour, and that's likely due to the fact that we have the optional catback exhaust on this particular model, and it does make the cabin a little bit louder. Now, obviously, the engine sounds great, but you are going to get more noise in the cabin. If you're debating about whether or not to get that optional catback exhaust system, you should know that there's another factor to consider. The Ram 1500 has a very aggressive cylinder deactivation system on the V8 engine that obviously helps improve fuel economy, but when it's in the four-cylinder mode, it does change the exhaust note, and it sounds just a little bit peculiar at times. It also gets louder when it's operating in four-cylinder mode than when it's operating in eight-cylinder mode. On the flip side, the aggressive cylinder deactivation system has helped this beat the EPA estimate of 17 miles per gallon, even though this does use the 392 axle ratio, not the more efficient axle ratio that you can also get with the 5.7-liter V8. We've been averaging 17.8 miles per gallon over about 450 miles of very mixed driving, which is excellent for an engine that produces this kind of power. You might be interested to hear that the fuel economy out of this 5.7-liter V8 really is not that much different than the 3.5-liter twin-turbo EcoBoost in the F-150. It's also not that much different than the 2.7-liter EcoBoost in the F-150 in real-world driving. Those two turbocharged V6s seem to score higher in the EPA tests than in real-world driving. One of the big reasons for that is towing. When you're towing in the 2.7-liter V6 EcoBoost or the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine in the F-150, especially if you're doing this in a hotter climate, the engine computer is actually commanding the vehicle to inject more fuel into the cylinder than it can burn. It's doing that to actually cool off the cylinder, but the result is considerably lower fuel economy, especially if you're in a hotter climate. We don't have that same sort of thing going on in this V8 engine. Speaking in very general terms, if you're more of an occasional tower, then you're going to get better fuel economy overall with the 2.7-liter EcoBoost in the F-150. But if you're regularly towing 7,000 or 8,000 pounds, especially if you're doing it in hotter climates or up steep elevations, this engine may actually get you better fuel economy. When it comes to talking about pricing and comparisons, pickup trucks are the trickiest vehicle to talk about in the United States because there are so many different ways you can configure your pickup truck. It's not unusual for a mainstream sedan to come in 4 or perhaps 5 different trim levels in the US, but there are no less than 12 different trim levels of the Ram 1500 for the 2017 model year. And then of course you can mix and match the 3 different engines, the different bed lengths, and the different cabs as well. That results in thousands of different ways that you can configure your Ram 1500. And that makes comparisons very tricky, even when we're talking about the F-150 or the Silverado, which can be configured roughly identically to the Ram, and very, very difficult when we start taking a look at Toyota or Nissan pickup trucks, which don't have the same level of variation. In addition to that, when you start adding options to your Ram 1500 pickup truck, you can easily triple the price of the base tradesman model that's on this chart for $26,495. In order to help improve fuel economy across the lineup, Ram decided to keep that 3.6-liter V6 engine as the base engine option, even in some upper-end trims, like the Laramie trim. You'll find the 5.7-liter V8 engine in some of the other trims, and then just the Tradesman HFE gets the diesel engine standard, although you can add the diesel to a lot of the other trims as well. That 3-liter diesel engine has, of course, been on production hold while FCA and the EPA and the California Air Resources Board all duke out exactly what was going on with the diesel emissions in the Ram and Jeep vehicles. However, FCA recently restarted diesel production, and that implies that a deal is coming pretty soon. With that in mind, if I were truck shopping today and I were looking at a Ram 1500, I think I would buy one with that 3-liter diesel engine. We've driven it before. It's an excellent engine. It's very smooth. We get a huge amount of torque, and it's very well mated to the 8-speed automatic transmission. That small diesel engine produces about the same kind of horsepower and torque that we found in Ram's 3/4-ton pickup trucks 20 years ago, and we get 4 more gears to play with. I would also get the four-corner air suspension. I know some people have been concerned about air suspension reliability, but personally I appreciate the trade-off benefits for that four-corner system. Not only does that system help improve the vehicle's ride, make it easier to get in and out of the vehicle, improve clearance for off-roading situations, but it also has a serious improvement in terms of behavior on the road when you have heavy payloads in the bed or you're towing a heavy trailer with a high tongue weight. And I strongly suggest buying an integrated trailer brake controller if you do much towing with your truck. It's going to be an awful lot easier than those aftermarket models. Now let's move on to the likes and dislikes. I like the way the Ram pickup truck is styled. I also like some of the handy features. I already mentioned the four-corner air suspension and the Ram boxes, but I also like the way the interior is designed in the Ram pickup. On the downside, the Ram is getting a little bit old and it is starting to show. We don't get Chrysler's latest infotainment and navigation system, so you won't find Apple CarPlay or Android Auto on the interior, and the seats are not quite as comfortable as we find in the F-150, especially if you start taking a look at top-end F-150 models which have their massage and anti-fatigue seat. That is easily the most comfortable seat in the pickup truck segment. Although FCA was one of the first companies to start putting LCDs in the instrument cluster, the LCD software design that we find in the Ram is one of FCA's older designs. General Motors and especially Ford have definitely upped their game when it comes to LCDs in the instrument cluster, and the F-150 really has an excellent display. You should also keep in mind that payload and towing capacities in the Ram are going to be a little bit below the Silverado and notably below the F-150, thanks to the all-aluminum design we find in the F-150 and Ford's general regard for high payload and towing abilities. With that in mind, let's move along to the F-150 as our first competitor. At $27,110, the F-150 starts more expensive than the Ram 1500. As I said before, comparisons can be tricky because it's difficult to equip the vehicles comparably. However, if you get as close as possible, the F-150 is going to be $3,000 to $5,000 more expensive than a comparable Ram. For 2018, Ford is promising an all-new small diesel engine in the F-150, which is definitely targeted directly at the Ram 1500 with their EcoDiesel. We don't know all the details about Ford's new diesel engine, but it is likely going to be mated to their brand new 10-speed automatic transmission, and that removes some of the advantage that we saw in the Ram 1500 in the 2017 model year and earlier, because the 8-speed automatic that we find in the Ram 1500 is one of the defining features of their half-ton truck. It's much smoother and it's much faster shifting than the 6-speed that we find in the Fords or the 6-speed that we find in the GM trucks. But Ford and General Motors' new 10-speed auto that we'll find in the F-150 for 2018 and in the Silverado in coming years is an excellent transmission as well, and it's doing exactly the same thing for the F-150 that the 8-speed did for the Ram. If you're concerned about the durability of an aluminum body or aluminum bed, then the Ram 1500 is going to be a good option. FCA has said that the next generation Ram trucks will use more aluminum than they do today, but they've committed to using a steel bed. And aluminum is going to bend and break a little bit more easily than the average steel bed, especially the way they've been designed in the modern pickup trucks. I'm sure you've all seen the commercials out there with people dropping things into the bed of the F-150 and it poking holes through the aluminum bed. I think those commercials are a little unrealistic, and many shoppers out there will put a heavy-duty bed liner in their F-150, which should really mitigate some of those concerns. However, the concerns are not entirely without merit. Aluminum is not going to be quite as durable in some situations as steel. On the flip side, the F-150 has absolutely amazing payload and towing numbers, and that's all thanks to the aluminum body and the aluminum bed, because the more weight you pull out of the vehicle, the more weight you can put back in the vehicle in terms of cargo. Next up, we have the Chevy Silverado. It's a little bit more expensive starting than the Ram 1500, and if you comparably equip it to the configuration that I was talking about earlier, it's going to be about $2,000 to $3,000 more expensive. Of course, comparable configurations are tricky, as I said before, because we don't have a four-corner air suspension available in the Silverado or a small diesel engine or the Ram boxes that I do have on my preferred configuration. On the other hand, General Motors does have an interesting engine lineup because they do have the only truck-focused V6 in this segment. It's obvious when you take a look at the torque numbers out of the base engine in the Silverado that it has much more grunt at the low end than we find in either the Ram or the Ford. On the downside, that engine is mated to a 6-speed automatic, so we don't have as many gears to choose from, and for the most part, that actually makes up the difference when we take a look at V6 performance and capability in the Ram versus the Silverado. Instead of a small diesel engine, General Motors gives us the choice of two different V8 engines, a 5.3 and a 6.2. Power output from the Ram 5.7-liter V8 slots between the 5.3 and the 6.2, but it is a little bit closer to the 6.2-liter engine that we see in the Silverado. Although the Silverado is really just about as modern as the Ram 1500, for some reason in my mind it seems a little bit older on the inside, although we do find General Motors' latest infotainment systems inside the cabin, including CarPlay and Android Auto integration. General Motors doesn't seem to be quite as interested in competing in the gadget war that FCA and Ford seem to have going on with their pickup trucks. So we don't find things like the four-corner air suspension, or the Ram boxes, or the man step, or the massaging seats that you will find in the Ford or the Ram trucks. Next up, we have the Toyota Tundra. As I said before, comparisons with the Toyota and the Nissan trucks can be very difficult because they don't come in the same variety of configurations. The ways that you can mix and match engines, cabs, beds, and trim levels in the Tundra just does not compete with any of the American trucks. On the flip side, the Tundra has earned a very well-deserved reputation for reliability. So if bulletproof reliability is of utmost importance to you, then the Tundra makes a good alternative. On the downside, it is going to be a little bit more expensive than the Ram. We aren't going to find the same kind of features and functions in the Tundra, and it's going to be a little bit less fuel efficient. Toyota has given the Tundra some very powerful V8 engines, however, they're not exactly fuel efficient compared to the latest engines that we see from Ram, from Ford, or from General Motors. It's obvious when you look at the brand new Nissan Titan that Nissan is definitely targeting the big three American pickup trucks, because the Titan now comes in more varieties and more different configurations than we see out of the Toyota truck. Most notably, we now see base configurations of the Titan that are definitely targeted at the work truck shopper. We also see a two-door format with the 8-foot bed. However, there is still not as much variation in the Titan lineup as we see in the big three American players. To compensate for that, Nissan has been very aggressive at the pricing, and the Titan is one of the few vehicles that will be less expensive than the Ram 1500 when you comparably equip it in the mid-level trims. Unfortunately, the Titan did not get a more efficient engine with this generation, so the large V8 engine is still very, very thirsty, even though it did gain a new 7-speed automatic transmission. If you're looking for a half-ton pickup truck with about 350 to 400 horsepower, the Titan is going to be one of the least efficient options, especially if you're not doing much towing. My bottom line in the half-ton pickup truck segment is that for me, it's a tie between the Ram 1500 and the Ford F-150. There are things about each vehicle that I really like. I really like the air suspension, the Ram boxes, and the overall driving behavior of the Ram pickup truck line. However, I really like the payload and towing capacities that we see in the F-150 and the improved seat comfort and the ability to have Apple CarPlay. If you're concerned about the long-term durability of an aluminum pickup truck or turbocharged engines, then the Ram is going to be a better choice for many than the F-150. In addition to that, if you spend a great deal of towing, you may find yourself getting better fuel economy in the Ram pickup trucks than in the Ford pickup trucks, because those turbocharged V6 engines actually have to consume excess fuel to help keep cylinder temperatures down. And that can make those small turbocharged engines actually thirstier than the 5.7-liter V8 that we find in the Ram. Be sure and let me know what you think about the Ram pickup truck and what your choice in the half-ton pickup truck segment is down there in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you want to support us, head over to patreon.com and you can pledge your support to this channel. You can also find us over at facebook.com/AlexNautos. I'll see you next week.